kayu kanu iya kayu unu tai kanu inna kayu unu taya kayu unu tai.
Hello, and welcome again to the Goddess in Art. This program is dedicated to the oldest and most enduring tradition in art, the Goddess in Art. My name is Starr Goode, and my guest again this evening is Vicki Noble. She's back for the second of a two-part interview. Vicki Noble co-created the Motherpeace tarot deck, as well as being an author and a healer, and the founder of a school for women which deals with the shamanic healing arts. Welcome back, Vicki.
Thank you, Starr.
Vicki, in getting myself familiar with your work and working with your books, and again doing a workshop with you and hearing you talk, I heard you say something that just was so moving to me, and something I really felt, which is you made the statement that your basic pledge to the goddess was faith in the process. The process of life, of your experience and how you feel it in your body. And I would like for you to talk a little bit and share with us why that pledge is the foundation of your relationship to the goddess.
I feel it's sort of what's necessary for our adaptation as human beings on the planet. We might survive if we could align ourselves with process instead of imposing our ideas on nature and on the world around us. And so in my own life, I feel like that's been a secret of success, you might say. And it's been the nature of my shamanic process. 12 years ago, I experienced a really deep transformation, a healing crisis in the shamanic way, and a whole opening of my energies in a different direction. And I basically decided at that time that I would go with what was wanting to come through me and what seemed to be pressing me forward in some way in my life, which I now call the creative energies, and that I would honor that no matter what. And so I decided there were certain things I would not do in my life anymore, that I wouldn't prostitute myself in any way that I felt that was happening. I wouldn't work for someone for low wages, and I wouldn't be treated by doctors in certain ways, and I just wouldn't allow myself to be abused in ways that I think are very, very common in our culture because of our ideas and ideologies.
Well, it's a few things on that. I mean, honoring the creative and destructive process.
Yes.
I mean, those energies. So,
Yes.
and that's the flip side of it is taking a look at that, and that terrifying part of it. Because if you do, it's such a different orientation rather than concepts or reason and all.
Yes,
not that
it
this
is.
is unreasonable, but I think it's like a divine reason, really.
Yes.
That it really ultimately makes sense. But what you're talking about is your body as a sacred container for, what's going on with you. I mean, it is
Right.
like the basic vessel in which you live, and how you know things is because you feel them.
Right. And it's the body as a container for me and a vessel for what's happening in the universe as well, so that I might actually tune into or attune with the universal flow of energies and get with it instead of opposing it, instead of trying to put it down. In the ancient times, the goddess Inanna is the first shaman. She's the first literature that we know of, and she went to the underworld voluntarily in order to surrender her ego, to be transformed, to have a new identity, to become a new self. And then after her is all the heroic epics, and the hero goes to the underworld to meet the same dark goddess, but he goes there with a sword to kill her. And he dismembers her, and that's the beginning of history and the end of the world in terms of the goddess religion. And I feel that ever since then, all of us, men and women, have been in a process of attempting to eradicate any kind of instinct from our lives, as if the instinctual process were equated with the demonic.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because the first recorded cuneiforms in Sumer of the Inanna myth was by a woman,
Yes.
Enhe Duana. So
Exactly.
the first written poetry, was recorded by a woman, and also in allowing yourself to go to the process, in being in touch with what you feel, you're also positing living in what you don't know.
Yes.
You're letting,
Yes.
you're taking yourself in saying, and there's a power in what you don't know,
Yes.
and that you are part of this process, and it's moving forward, and you don't exactly know where it's taking you, but it is a trust and it is a process, and by cutting that off and trying to know everything, which is like what the hero is not going to face what he doesn't know.
Exactly.
He is not going to face that power of transformation. Instead, it's just going to kill it and have
what
like
he knows would be annihilated if he did, and what
That's
he knows
right.
himself to be would be annihilated. And there's some way, I suppose, that women are more organically attuned to that kind of process because of the biological invasion of our bodies by the hormonal cycle. We have to surrender, and if we don't, well, then we have what we have in our culture, an epidemic of PMS. And so I guess maybe these days we're not much closer than anyone else, but there's a way in which the Dark Goddess is asking us to return to process and to an honoring of it. I feel if we would do birthing in a natural way in our culture, there would be a lot of healing power in that. That if we didn't intervene in the birthing process, women would get very strong from giving birth, and babies would be born freely, and it would be life-changing. I can't almost imagine what it would mean in terms of our culture.
Also, in terms of that sense of the process or the hero murder, it's at that point where the going gets tough, or to really be facing your own death, because we are natural. We live in a natural world. Of course, women are more in touch with the cycle in the sense that they have a monthly cycle. They know, but the seasons revolve. There's always rotation. They're all
we die every month.
Yeah.
We die every year. We should become very practiced at dying and being reborn, so that when we reach physical death, it doesn't frighten us. That's a basic shamanic practice or shamanic concept.
Because we're not trying to superimpose something, we're just tuning from within, because these are the rhythms of life.
Right.
This is life.
Right.
And so to tune into that and to align with that would be a whole other process, and empowering, because you are taking the totality where it takes you, whether it's something creative or whether it's killing something you thought you wanted, but there it goes.
There it goes.
Because we all experience that anyway, even if it's in a psychological sense. We love somebody, we didn't get them, or whatever. It's
and these days there's a strong call for the destructive energies, in the sense that we need to say no. We need to say no to almost everything in order to be able to begin to honor process as it wants to happen. So we have to say no to all the interventions that are available on every level of society. No to healing intervention. If you become ill, your body knows what to do about that. There are natural responses, and there are natural ways of being with illness that lead to rebirth that don't need intervention. But to say no to the intervention takes tremendous courage. And that is the destructive goddess. To bring the destructive power of the goddess through you means that you finally have the power to say, no, get out of my life. Let me decide. I'll decide how I die. I'll decide how I heal. I'll decide how I birth. I'll birth a baby my own way, without someone doing it for me, taking it from me.
And just bringing it down to something very specific, I want to take it in kind of to your process. I mean, at first, there is a process of at first listening, or is a process of something first entering your life when you are trying to ground yourself in your body. And you told me the story of a little doll came into your life, and I wondered if you could explain that a little.
Well, this was 12 years ago. A lot of things came into my life very quickly with the entry of what I call the Dark Goddess now. I didn't have a name for her at that time. But one of the things I opened to in 1976 was art. And the way that I opened to it was through an artist named Cassandra Light, who runs a school in Berkeley called The Way of the Doll. And she made a doll named Regina that I'll show you. And I bought that doll. I was very attracted to her. She was like an old shaman woman. And I'm not sure I had that term in my consciousness at that time either. But I was very attracted to her energy. And I invited her into my life and kept her in my house for all these years. She's like a part of the family. And there's something about the entry of the goddess energies like that that creates a willingness to face the process as it comes, and that opened me basically into everything that has become my life and my career and who I think I am at this point in time.
In the whole process of doing, this big breakthrough of doing this, the Motherpeace tarot decks, which are all over the world. I've traveled and you just see them everywhere, and I know that you feel those are really bigger than you. You channeled
Much
something
bigger
there.
Than me.
So
yes.
it's because I know they're almost like more than what you know.
Absolutely. Well, Karen and I had never drawn pictures, either one of us, so we hadn't any identity as an artist. So they came through in a very surprising way.
That's almost lucky, isn't it? You didn't have that fixed thing. Well, let's get to the first group of pictures. We want to see Regina, and we're going to see a little bit of some of the Motherpeace images. So let's see this mysterious Regina who entered your life. Here she is.
This is Regina in her original form by Cassandra Light. She really embodies what is frightening to lots of adults and what children are really attracted to. All the little children used to come to my house and bring Regina presents.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and make them make spells in her case. I told them if they made wishes, she would help them. And they're very attracted to her, and I feel a childlike attraction that way to the Dark Goddess. I appreciate her power.
Yes.
I appreciate her wisdom. I feel she has something, she can take me by the hand and lead me somewhere, and I trust her. And so it's that process that allowed me to open into my own artwork. This is the first pot, the first actual creation I ever made from my hands. It's an incense pot, and when the smoke comes up through the lid that you're seeing here, she blows smoke out of her mouth. It's very eerie. I made her on Halloween in 1977.
So this is an anniversary today.
Yes.
Because it's Halloween.
She's an oracle. All the old images have this trance-like quality of the staring eyes and the open mouth. You see, this is a Kali mask that I made around the same period of time. Actually, this might have been Hallowmas on another year, I think it was. And so she's really showing the kind of fearsome openness of the eyes that comes with the Kali consciousness, or the consciousness of the Dark Goddess. She helps you to see things as they are.
Because she is an impersonal energy, and in a certain way she's doing what she's going to do and take you someplace regardless.
Yes.
Now and here we start with the Motherpeace.
This is an image I made. This is called the Crone. We replaced the traditional hermit with the Crone. She represents the guide who would take you to the underworld. So she's your friend, and she represents the part of a woman that is virginal in the old sense of not belonging to anyone, not belonging to a man, being there for herself.
And we see this kind of Cretan image in the corner, which we saw in our last show of the goddess with this.
This one is actually from the Andes. This is a
really?
pre-Columbian
Well,
image, but there you go. The similarities are striking. She's a Hecate image in my mind, but Hecate, of course, is a Greek name for whoever this is in the Andean culture. The snake biting its tail is a picture of closing your circuits, becoming inviolate.
Now, one of the interesting things on that detail is we saw her listening. Here she is,
Yes.
the Crone is listening.
Yes.
And that is part of, instead of just always this action and taking energy. And
Instead of doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in a receptive and an active state. She's actually listening for instructions. She's actually listening to the spirit world for advice and guidance and direction. And she's reading the signs. That little goddess on the post is a signpost, an oracular omen giver, so that she'll know which path to take. And I feel that's it. I teach my students the concept of synchronicity as a spiritual path. I tell them if you can learn to make your movements in response to the responses that are coming from the universe toward each of us, then there's a kind of a flow. You get in what the Chinese call the Tao. You get into the way that your life is meant to go. And it's not that you're not creative and making choices, but you're doing that in a context. You're not completely separate from nature and from the environment around you. You're actually having a dialogue all the time.
Yes, and there is that sense of that the universe is speaking to us and is
the
giving
time.
us clues, but are we listening?
Are we listening? Are we able to listen? Do we even have channels open to listen to the goddess?
And what's it going to, if we don't hear at this level, what's the next level that it's
Yes.
got to...
How will it have to crash into our lives if we don't hear the subtle guidance? Right.
And I also wanted to say, too, it is a paradox. It's a mystery, this relationship. We can't, posit everything in the goddess or posit everything in the human personality.
Right.
It's a blending
Right.
of who we are. And, somehow as a human being, you have to kind of hold up your end and do certain things. It's not like, I'm just going to lay back, take a bath, and the goddess is going to handle the rest of my life.
special, she's going to take care of me. Right.
Right.
It's not quite like that. There's definitely a participation from our side. Anthropologists have called what primitive people do the participation mystique.
Exactly.
I think it's a riot. What is that? To participate in one's life in a full way, to participate in nature, to participate in what we are actually genetically a part of. We're cells in her body. To participate in that seems actually to be normal to me, and to not participate in it seems a mystique. I wonder, don't we have a separation mystique in our culture, or something that's the opposite of that name?
No, we have mathematics and science.
We have total understanding of the mystery. There is no mystery.
Right, just diagram it, and that'll solve everything.
Right.
So once one is listening, and then that starts moving you. Obviously, then that gets into some kind of transformation, because
Yes, it pushes you.
that's the next stage. Right?
Absolutely. I think listening in the way that you're describing is a function of the intuition. And so we actually see the future sometimes, or we know something, and we know our entire movement all at once.
And we know it in our body.
And we know it fully.
Here.
Yeah, it's not really rational. It's not unconscious, but it's not rational either. It's just a total knowing at one time.
And nevertheless true.
And absolutely has a strong feeling of truth in the belly, I say, in the body. And out of that, we must make conscious decisions to move towards what we see, to move in relation to what we know. And that's the hard part. That's the part that requires empowerment, and that requires grounding, and that requires some internalized sense of authority, that I actually am a capable human being, capable enough to make the next decision about my life, even if the culture around me doesn't approve.
Well, one would think once one felt that contact, you know, that's like the jumping off point to start that transformation. Let's look at some of the images of transformation from the Motherpeace, the deck that you co-created with Karen Vogel, because we can see some of these powerful images that you drew. So let's see these sets of images. Okay, well here's the snake.
The quintessential transformation card, the death card. Karen Vogel made this image, and she has in mind here the shedding of an old skin, which is like the death of an identity that we've carried, and it's final. This represents Pluto, the big planet, and how she works in our lives, the dark goddess and how she works in our lives. The suggestion here is that you could experience every death in your life with total consciousness. You could move from one form to another. You could move out of one skin and into another while being awake. You could actually retain your consciousness through that process. This is the Priestess of Swords, the Snow Queen, I call her. This is also one of Karen's images. And what's happening here is she's a death goddess image. She has the ability to detach from her relationships with other people and from her emotions, enough to get some stark clarity, some wisdom, which the owl represents.
And she's definitely going someplace.
Yeah,
regardless of the circumstances, she's going.
Yeah.
She's moving.
She's unafraid to be alone, which really helps. Here's the star. This is an image that shows us how to open, how to become trusting, how to immerse ourselves in our feelings, in the flow of life, in the water, the nurturing of the universe, and how to become like a vessel, how to really open to the psychic powers, to the healing powers, so that you see that in her opening she's actually radiating light. And so she becomes a transformer or a carrier of light for others. And so she has a healing touch. Not only is she healed, but she touches others. Here's a male image to show you, these are my images now, to show you a kind of a Shiva figure, a male possibility of containment and surrender to the feminine, a love of the goddess and a love of women, and the ability to open to artistic inspiration.
It's a real singing. The birds are singing. There's the music of the singing, and it's a very inspiring
he's
card.
Really open to messages from the unconscious and from the spirit world. And here's a powerful image that Karen made of a priestess on the tower, bringing Kundalini power in, high voltage energy from the universal forces, which she has learned to master. This is the shamanic task. She's not afraid of the energies. They don't knock her off balance. She holds the lightning bolts right in her hand and is able to bring them through on behalf of her community for the purposes of healing.
This isn't Mrs. Santa Claus here. I mean, this is
this is not being a nice girl.
Yes.
You have to give up, destroy the nice girl in order to get to this level of empowerment.
Oh, and this is just such a bursting forth.
Yes, this is, I used to say this was the little baby boy jumping for joy. This is the bursting of energy, free energy that comes from the death process.
Yes, when because something's died. That egg, that's an old,
right.
He is no longer
shell.
In there.
Yep.
In that little safe contained thing.
And this is the regenerative power of the dark goddess, which actually extends even into the physical realm, so that we can cure cancer and other life-threatening diseases from this energy, from the heat that heals.
In that sense, again, of the energy moving, because if you're moving, if you, you know, you're not being stuck in some place, if you're seeing things as cyclic, if you're not insisting on holding on something that you wanted, I mean, sure, you did want it, but you're not going to get it or whatever.
Or you got it and it goes out.
That's
you know,
right,
the
it's
Buddhists
been fulfilled and it's been passed. And
right.
Also, you made a very interesting statement, too, like that the essence of shamanic work is to contain.
to contain power, to allow power, to allow high voltage to come through you, to allow energy that's bigger than you to come through. If you think of those big snakes in the beginning of the first program, if you think of the snake in the center of the earth as providing a kind of kundalini energy that's much bigger than any of us, we are literally cells in her body, but that power can come into our bodies and into our psychic systems. And if it comes in and we don't hold it, then we go crazy, or we act out, or we become, obsessed with something. It comes through a particular channel. But if we can hold it, then it grows and it rises and it turns into something other than just its pure potency. And so if at first you feel rage, for example, which many women do, you can transmute that. That becomes fuel. That moves right into creativity, becomes creative expression. Ask any artist who's making images of the goddess, and I bet she started with a contact with her rage. But it didn't stay there. She didn't stay stuck in that expression, which is one minor expression of the possibilities. Rage is a beginning, a stepping off point.
And again, it's this. It always comes back to the body, and our body is the container. It's the vehicle in which we live. So, and that's where we're going to be doing these things. I mean, it's our hand that's going to paint or write, or our legs are going to walk us to something. I mean, so it is really.
And it's the body as the sacred vessel. In the ancient times, a woman and her body and the temple, they were all the same. They were all representations of the goddess. I think our task in these times as women is to embody the energies of the goddess, that the goddess is a force that exists in what's called the eternal, or that exists, somewhere in the unseen real, but that if we want to bring her into the world, which is being asked of us, I think, we have to embody her. Individual women and groups of women, have to embody her, bring her through, give her face, give her some kind of an expression. And we do that actually through our own beings, our own lives, as well as making icons and images of her.
Right, I mean, really, where else are we going to do it?
Exactly. And how else is she going to express, other than through we who carry her image?
I think it's an interesting quality of this mastery of it can be too little or it can be too much or something, and like just following that thread, and again, what you were saying, like trusting to the process.
If you trust the process in this way, then there will be times where you're asked to speak out and to really not contain, to speak very directly, to make known what you believe, and to do that in public. And there will be other times where it just feels from the body appropriate to contain, not to blast, not to let loose with what you know, but to hold it. There's wisdom in that. There's caution in that.
Yes, and it's not like a rule, it's just being with yourself. And I'd like to get into some of these images from the Motherpeace that you brought for us to share, like these images of containment and embodiment, because they are so healing just to see them. So let's take a look at these images of Motherpeace.
Well, here's another one that I call the Shakti woman. This is an image I made. This is the Priestess of Wands in the Motherpeace. She's right there with her power animal, and she has one of those ceremonial staffs from the Paleolithic in her hand. She's just made rain. She's very satisfied with herself. She has the blood power, that's blood root growing at her feet. She represents the ancient matriarchal priestess, the woman who belongs to herself and works for the community.
She looks pretty grounded to me, Vicki.
She looks pretty grounded, yeah. If we can become that grounded, we could probably do pretty much anything that needs to be done. This is the High Priestess. Archetypally, in the tradition of Tarot, she holds the energy of the feminine in the sense of the feminine as doorway, as the lunar cyclic doorway into the mystery. And this is a tantric image and has partly to do with how men might approach the goddess, because for many men the approach to the goddess, the way to the goddess, is through the woman as doorway, and that's seen in the tantric tradition in a very specific way.
So this means surrendering to that goddess.
Surrendering to and entering through her,
yes,
in some way, coming into her realm. She sits at the center. Here's another image like that. This is the Strength card. This is an Ishtar or Astarte image, or Tara in Ireland. She has to do with the sexual mysteries. So you come to her temple, which is nature. She's out in nature like Artemis. And you come to her and you honor her. And for a man, again, this is the way of the Tantras. You come into her space. It's female-centered sexuality that happens here. It's female-centered religion that happens here. This is female-based shamanic healing work that's going on here with the power animals and in the forest.
And all of these pictures have an image, the sense of a doorway to me.
Yes,
you know, that they are entering
well, they
into
are
something.
doorways.
Yes.
I think that's right. This one is the daughter of discs and shows the way each of us might surrender to the universe. In a way, she's just offering up her willingness to be acted on by forces that are larger than her. And so even though she doesn't know what will happen, she's open to being acted on, to being worked through.
And she's in the center of a circle. This is a card I use a lot to ground myself. I really love this card, and she is in the center of that circle.
A lot of safety there.
Yes.
A lot of protection.
So she's in a container, and we see a lot of containers in that one.
Now this is an uncontained expression. This is the the shaman of wands. I'm sorry, the shaman of swords in the Motherpeace, and she's really bursting with truth. She has to express her truth at all costs. She can't hold back. This is about seeing clearly and speaking clearly from the feelings, from the instincts, from what you know, absolutely committing to saying what's true for you, and in that way creating reality and creating the environment around you, having some participation in that.
And she does seem to really know what she's
She
blowing
does,
there.
doesn't she?
This is an interesting piece to me. This is by Judy Chicago. Again, to bring it into a contemporary artist working in this. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, well, this is one of her birth project images, a very powerful shamanic image called Birth Tear. She's dealing here with the problem of pain in birthing, which many of the spiritual New Age kind of philosophies have tried to obliterate as if you have rushes and not pain. But you know, any woman who's given birth knows that you actually experience what is real pain, and you have to master and transmute it. And so she did us a favor with that image. This is an image by Mayumi Oda, a Japanese artist living in Marin, and this is her black Dakini. This is an image I give to my students at the beginning of my 9-month training program with them, to embody for them the dark goddess and the kind of power that's coming through her that I think will influence them in their process, because she's my deity. She's the energy force that I'm connected with, and so I think they'll experience her.
And I think in both of these last pieces that we saw, that it really is a very liberating thing to see these images. It really, we feel it in our bodies.
Yes.
And it is, I mean, in a way it's terrifying, but it's really wonderful too.
It's terrifying to let go of whatever security we've known, even if it's been uncomfortable. And yet it's completely liberating to experience ourselves as the energy that we are. We're really just energy moving.
Well, I'd like to thank you for being my guest these last 2 shows, and for me, you really do embody the goddess, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Starr.
Good night, and
Good night.
Thank you for watching.
Inna kai